Okay, sorry for that. Yeah, we're going to begin. Don't worry. I know there was no sound, but we're ready now. Okay, right. Parsha Shelach. So what we're going to, I entitled this shiur from moral panic to moral responsibility. Try and understand the parsha in terms of both what went wrong and how, and we can learn lessons from what could go right, or the elements within the parsha which can teach that to us. So let's begin with an understanding of the three words that are used for Meraglim. Obviously, the focus of the parsha is the Meraglim, the spies, but there are actually three words that are used in the context of the whole story. And we're familiar with the fact that the only real way, the way to learn this parsha properly, really, is in conjunction with the other part of the story in Devarim, where Moshe Rabbeinu says, "You came to me." Right? Rashi brings it at the beginning. Rashi, the second Rashi on the parsha. Where the Torah says in Shelach that Hashem says to Moshe, "Shlach lecha anoshim," right? L'datcha, send for yourself anoshim. These are the Meraglim. But Rashi fills in the gaps there and says, if you look in Sefer Devarim, Perek Aleph Pasuk Chaf Beis, "Vatikavon elai kulchem," you approached me, you came to me, and you said to me, the words that they said to Moshe Rabbeinu was Nishlacha lefaneinu anoshim v'yachperu lanu es haaretz, right? To search out for us the land. So therefore, what you have here is effectively three words for Meraglim or for spy, right? You've got the word losur, right? Right? Losur es haaretz, v'yosuru es eretz Canaan, right? That's one. You've got leragel, which is like, as in Meraglim, and then you've got the word yachperu, which is the word used in Devarim to sort of search out. So there are three words. The Kli Yakar picks up on this. We'll just see this part of this Kli Yakar inside. It is in sort of in the middle. Well, it's on the words of Yosura Eretz Canaan. So if you look at if you're following inside, then you can look at it inside. It's in Pasuk base on the words of Yosura Eretz Canaan. Says the Kli Yakar, he points out this. You find three words that are used in this context: Yosuru, V'yachperu, V'yuraglu, and each one is used by a different one of those involved in, so to speak, in the story. So Bnei Yisrael say, he says, they use the word the yachperu. That's what the word that they use. And he's going to explain each one. That's in our parsha, right? They shall search out. They shall. Well, how we understand the word yosuru, we'll come back to. Of the Meraglim kasiv, and with the Meraglim it says v'yaraglu oso, and they searched it out, right? With the Meraglim themselves, it uses the word v'yaraglu, and they were, if you like, meragel. They searched it out in this way. They spied in this way. And the Kli Yakar explains it like this. He says, there were three views. There were three perspectives. What does Yosuru mean? The word Yosuru, he says, is effectively something positive. Something extra. The word lotur we translate as to search, spy, but really, or to explore, but really it can mean something extra. The word yisroy means to be something more. Hashem's intention is, let them find out, let them search, let them make sure, and let them explore to find out how much better the land is than anything else, right? To bring them up to this beautiful land. And what is the tova? He says the tova is the tova ruchanis. This is the spiritual beauty of Eretz Yisrael. And he goes and brings Gemara that talks about this. And he says, he says this is the whole purpose, if you like, of the land of Israel, of Eretz Yisrael, is to bring to that ultimate good, to the Tova Mitis, ki ein l'odom Yisrael tachas hashemesh zulosoi. There's no greater, there's nothing more under the sun. It is the highest level that we have, if you like, on this physical earth. It's the highest point. It is the Yisroel. It is the extra. It is more than anything else that we have. The Yisron Eretz Zeba Koilhu, and this is he brings a passage in Koheles that this extra point about the land of Eretz Yisrael. So that's the first perspective. Hashem, the word Hashem uses is Losuras Aretz, the Osuras Aretz. It's the highest level in terms of perspective. Avol Yisrael says the Kliyaka Ruach Acheres Oisim. They had a different perspective. He tomed Hoyu Mevakshim Toyana Loshuv Mitzrayim. They're always looking for an excuse, a reason to go back to Mitzrayim, right? That's what we see very much in Parshas Va'aloscha. Anything that they can, they're always sort of saying, well, maybe this is a reason, a rationale for not to be here in this desert. And that's why they use the words v'yachperu. It's a word to mean disgrace, right? Again, it's awkward, difficult with the translation because really we end up using the same English word for all three, right? To search out, to spy, right? But the word v'yachperu, he says, really means cherpa. Cherpa means like a disgrace. They wanted to find the problems. They wanted to see the negative things about the land. To find a problem and to return to Mitzrayim. But they didn't go so far, right, as wanting to say something false about the land. Yes, it's true. They were, maybe it's even partly subconsciously wanting to look for something negative. But at the end of the day, they are not saying, they're not proposing to use a sort of form of falsehood, right? This is the third word. Right? They did something much worse. They went a lower level even than what they were asked to do. And they said falsehood. Like anyone who goes and says something, a false rochel, holech rochel is a reference to someone who speaks Lashon Hara. They spoke negatively about the land. Hamaflik kol dova, the idea of exaggerating, lahagid yosem imasharol, to say more than they had seen, right? They went beyond, above and beyond in the way they presented what they had seen. That's why it says vayiraglu osa. Ki regel lashon rochel, because the word regel has a similarity to rochel. This is explained elsewhere. Rashi explains this in Kedoshim, where the words explains lo selech rochel. He links the word rochel as in rochilus to regel, right? So this is where it comes from. And he says that he goes on to say that you can also explain that when Hashem says v'yosuru, is a reflection of the fact that Eretz Yisrael has that greater goodness above all the other lands. You don't see the rest inside, but he goes on to explain how there is this extra idea, the idea that Eretz Yisrael is superior in that sense to all other lands, right? And what they did was they did the exact opposite. They made it lower than other lands. What did they say? Eretz Ocheles Yerushalayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was emphasizing how beautiful and how wonderful the land is, and they said, no, it's the opposite. It's a land that consumes its inhabitants. They took it down from that lofty madrega, the madrega of Vayosuru, of Yisroin, of something great, and they brought it down to regel, to the foot, to the depths, in that sense, right? Vayiraglu. That's what he explains. Okay, so what I think there is a powerful link here to the end of the parsha with the Kli Yakar's understanding that in per se, the word vayosuru is not a negative word. It's quite a chiddush, right? It's not a negative word. Despite that, in a negative connotation is l'ragel. He goes on to explain, by the way, how you work this through with the way these words are used with the meraglim that Yehoshua said, because they also use the word meraglim there. Okay, we don't have to deal with that. He deals with that, right? Because that wasn't that. The spies that Yeshua says we know didn't have that same negative effect, connotation. He deals with that, right? But if you look at the end of the parsha, famously, the very, very last parsha is the parsha of Tzitzis. And there we find the same word, right? Yeah, we're familiar with the same word, right? V'lo sosuru, and Rashi links it, right? V'lo sosuru acharei levavchem v'acharei neichem. So you're in Perek Tesvov, Pasuk Lamed Tes. V'lo sosuru acharei levavchem v'acharei neichem. Says Rashi, what do those words mean? Not to stray after one's heart, your heart and your eyes. K'moi mitur ha'aretz. He says, just as it says from spying the land. It's the same word, to spy out the land, or sur ha'aretz. And he brings the idea that halei v'ho'einayim hey meraglim l'guf what they do is that the heart and the eyes, they lead the body in Masarsim Los Haveros. They hand over the Haveros to the person, the eye sees, the heart desires, and then the body, the physical body, does the Haveros, does the sin. So this is the link of, he says, Lo Sosuru is the same as Lo Sures Haaretz, right? In fact, there's a Chofetz Chaim here on the Torah. The Chofetz Chaim says, he says it quite a powerful idea, V'lo sosuru acharei levavchem. He says, do not stray after your heart. It's almost like he says there are people, he doesn't use these words, but this is, I think, what he means. He says there are people who are cardiac Jews. You ever heard that expression before? You know what a cardiac Jew is? A cardiac Jew is a Jew says, I'm a Jew balev, and Yehudi balev, right? I don't need to do it, the actions. I don't need to live as a Jew, right? So the Chofetz Chaim says, "V'lo sosuru acharei levavchem." It's not good enough just to be a Jew at heart. So not straightforward shut in the posuk, but a very a powerful idea nonetheless. But the point that I think we can bring out based on this kliyah is like this. Okay, the word "v'lo sosuru" can mean to stray. To stray, do not stray after your heart and your eyes, as it is in Parsha Tzitzis, or in the third Parsha Kriyashma, okay? But it can also mean to be something extra, the word Yisroim, to uplift, to go above and beyond, which is what Hashem's intention was when they should find the good and the beauty in the land, the extra, the yeser, the thing that was more than anything else. And I think the point here is that the point of free choice effectively lies in this word. That's why the same word is used, because in life we have the opportunity to take the high road if we wish. That's how I would express it, right? The Torah uses the same word that it uses when they're encouraged to find the good in the land, as it uses to straying after the heart and the eyes, because it's emphasizing the fact that it's all based on free choice. The fact that we are built in that way, the fact that we are built with eyes and a heart and whatever it is, intentions, desires that we have, that's not per se negative. It's all about how we use it. It's all about whether we are able, like you say, ki yisroin ha'ar min ha'choshech, right, to put the light above the darkness. And that is, perhaps we can suggest why that word is used, and the emphasis and the link in the sense of, being able to do something more, to go above and beyond, and that's based on our choice. The second idea, which is linked, I'd like to share with you, is on Posuk Yud Gimel Perek Tes Zayin. Vayikra Moshe LaHoshea, right? Sorry, back to the beginning. Vayikra Moshe LaHoshea binun Yehoshua. What does Rashi say? Very famously, Rashi says that Hispalel Olav, says Rashi, he davened for him, Ka Yoshecha mi'atzas meraglim. May Hashem save you from the Eitzah, from the advice of the meraglim. May Hashem save you from the advice of the meraglim. There was the extra yud was added to Yeshua's name. Chazal say that it was the yud which was taken from Sarai, right? So you have the yud from Sarai becomes Sarah. The yud is taken from Sarah and is given to Yeshua. The whole thing is why that was that link specifically. But either way, Moshe Rabbeinu davens for Yeshua. So the question here is obvious. There's a separate discussion that the Mepharshim describe and discuss why it was that Yehoshua needed Moshe Rabbeinu's tefillah and not Cholev, right? But there's a basic question which is asked by Rabbi Aaron Leib Steinman on his Perush on the Torah, and he says like this. He says that why did Moshe Rabbeinu not daven for all of them? You understand? They're all kula. We know that all are noshim chashuvim, right? They were all, these people were people who were selected because they were worthy of the task, right? And we know it all went wrong. They were all selected because they were worthy of the task. If they were all worthy of the task, why did Moshe Rabbeinu not daven? Not that Yeshua should be saved from the rest of them, right? This was already the initial stage here. There should have been a tefillah that would have been expressed that he should daven for each and every one of the meraglim, that they shouldn't, they should, like us to go back to what we said before, that they should choose the right path. They should choose that high road, and they shouldn't go low. They shouldn't be meraglim. They should be tayorim, right? Why? What was it about only Yeshua? And he says, it's very, very brief what he says, but I think it's very profound. He says like this: Yeshloma de lehispalel al hachirim beinyonei ruchnius, to daven for others in matters which are spiritual areas in Yonim of Ruchnius. Moel helps, it only works rak kishehem osim mashiachulim. Only when they do everything that they are able to themselves. The principle of being able to daven for something spiritual is not clear at all. It's not a simple thing if you think about it, right? Well, you've done for someone that they should be refuah, parnasa, right? You know, on a physical, right? Yeah, in a physical sense, gashmis. To daven for someone, you know, to succeed in ruchnius is more complex, hashkafically. Do you know what I mean? You know, you'd think, hold on a second, well, it's you know, that's free choice, isn't it? You know, it's bechira. Yeshua is going to have to make his own decision whether or not he does the right or wrong thing. You know, and in fact, he says, actually, he brings a chazon ish that tefillah itself it won't help, even tefillah itself is not going to help entirely. It's going to help a bit. It's going to help, but it's at the end of the day, it's going to be down to his own free choice, Yeshua, right? But this line, this idea of to daven for others in matters of ruchnius helps only when they do everything they're able to do. When they do what they're able to do, I think is a very powerful idea when you think about who Yehoshua was and his life. There are 3 times, I counted 3, I think more, but I think only 3 times, where we find Yehoshua suddenly steps forward, comes to the fore in the Torah. 3 times. What are the 3 times? Okay, number one, Milchemes Amalek. Yeah, he's the one who is chosen to battle out with Amalek, to lead the fight against Amalek. Number 2, he waits for Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai, right? Waits for Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai. Yeah, I mean, other times, other things in Midrashim and things like that, I think, but where it's explicitly emphasized in the Torah. And the third one is, of course, last week's Parsha, Eldad Umeidad, right? So Eldad Umeidad, and he comes running to Moshe Rabbeinu and says them what's happening, they're prophesying, whatever, right? Adoni Moshe Kalayim, he says that you should deal with them. And the next time, really, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he appears is in Parshas Pinchas when he's actually chosen to be the next leader to take over Moshe Rabbeinu. What links these three instances of Yeshua's presence in the Torah? It is each of them are difficult situations, difficult circumstances, right, where he demonstrates an ability to stay strong, right? Of course, to keep the faith. You know, he is able to stay strong and to himself demonstrate that he can distinguish himself in a difficult situation, a situation when others would perhaps be fearful to do anything, maybe even to go along with the crowd, and that ends up therefore defining him. Right? The first instance is more in terms of the battle itself, when it must have been, as we know it was, a complete shock. There's something attacked as a Kal Mitzrayim. He is able to stay focused and make sure that he does the task at hand. But certainly the other two are situations when he is relentless in terms of his maintaining his emunah and in terms of his support for everything that Moshe Rabbeinu stands for, and that ends up defining him, right? What is he defined as? Yeah, lo yomish mitoch ha'ohel, Parshas Kisisa. He doesn't move from the tent. He stays. His character trait, right, is persistence and consistence. That's what he is, right? So it could be that's what I think Rabbi Leib is emphasizing here, yeah? That why does Moshe Rabbeinu daven for Yeshua? Because you daven for a person that they should succeed in a spiritual sense if they demonstrate, knowing and understanding that they do what that they already have taken a great step forward themselves in that regard. Yeah, it's just my suggestion on to understand what he's saying here. Yeah, if a person demonstrates that they've already done that themselves in a spiritual sense, so they've done whatever they've demonstrated that capability, then the tefillah can work, and that's why Moshe Rabbeinu davens for Yeshua. That's one little suggestion. Perek Yudaleh Posuk Tes Vov, the Ramban. The Ramban brings a medrash, which is a medrash we're all very familiar with, and yet, if you think about it, it's quite surprising. It's quite a surprising medrash because it's just difficult to understand, and this is how the Ramban asks the questions clearly. The medrash is on. Let's just find this. Yeah, Yudalad, is it so it's not, maybe it's not Tesvav. 1 second. Sorry, Yudalad, I think Aleph, my mistake. Pasuk Aleph, right? They raise their voices, they Vayitnu es kolam, right? They pronounce their voices, they raise their voices, Vayivku ha'om balaylahu, and they weep on that night. Says the Ramban, they came towards the evening, and it says like this. He brings a few lines into Ramban. So it's a very familiar medrash. They wept. The Gemara says, it's not a medrash. The Gemara, they wept to b'chia shel chinam, and empty that night. They wept when it wasn't necessary. I will fix for them weeping for all generations as a result, because we know that was the day when the Churban Habayis would take place, the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. The Ramban asks, where did they see this? Where did Chazal see this in the Parsha? It's one of these Gemaras which we're so familiar with. We know they wept that night, that became the night of Tisha B'Av. Where? In other words, where do you see any hint in the Parsha to this idea? And he goes on, he gives his own answers. He gives an answer to where you find it and the link. Where Chazal got it from. I'm not going to focus now on the Ramban's answer. I'm going to focus on an Al-Shich. The Al-Shich HaKodesh says like this. And by the way, the other question here is also a straightforward pshat question, right? B'chir shel chino. Why is it b'chir shel chino? Weeping for nothing. Well, it wasn't weeping for nothing. You can. At the end of the day, why were they crying, right? They were crying because they were genuinely scared of what they'd been told. Right, so the whole thing is difficult to understand. The Al-Shich says like this. He asks, what is this word, Vayitnu es kolam? They gave their voice. It should have just said, Vatissa kol ha'edah es kolam. They raised their voices, right? What's that extra word, Vayitnu? And they gave, they produced, they gave the who gave. Okay. Also, he says, the phraseology of this pasuk is very strange. It says, Vatissa kol ha'edah, and then it says, ha'om. Who are the Eidah and who are the Om? You would not expect the Torah to change in one pasuk, yes, from an Eidah, which translates a congregation, and an Om, a people, not in the same pasuk. So he says, he brings a chazal, that the Eidah really refers to the Meraglim themselves. And what happened was that the Meraglim went into each individual tent. They went, or at least their own tents even, the Kerev Shivtai, inside their own shaver, right? And they sort of threw themselves on the ground and they wept and they were terribly upset. And what happened was their close circle gathered around each one of them and said, what's going on? Why are you so terribly upset? And then he said, he then said to his closest confidence, it's going to be terrible. You know what they're going to do to you, wife, children, it's going to be terrible. They're going to destroy us. And when they heard that, that's when they raised their voice and they wept. Okay. And then Hashem says, okay, you wept for nothing, and I will fix for you weeping for generations. According to the Al-Shich, Vatissa kol ha'edah is the Meraglim, who we know are referred to as Eidah in this parsha, because it says ad mosai lo Eidah hara hazo. It's this evil congregation, and that's the Eidah here. Okay, Rashi, by the way, gives a different pshat. Rashi says it was the son Hidros. It's not a million miles away. Rashi also learns that the Eidah refers to a level of seniority, right? But he's understanding that it's the Meraglim. Yeah, that's who the Eidah are, and they vayitnu es kolam. Okay, so what you have, according to the Al-Shich, really is almost like the formation and how this moral panic ensues, right? This extreme panic of, we're all going to fail. We're going to fail in this task. We're not up to this task. And the emphasis, according to the Al-Shich, is, and that's how you understand this word vayitnu. What does it mean vayitnu? Vayitnu means, he says, ki kolam shelahem nosnu ish libnei ohala. They gave their voice. They gave their voice to each shaver, to the rest of their shaver, right? It was their voice that they delivered that voice. That's what it means by Yitnu es Kolom. They delivered that voice. Without them doing that, there never would have been this mass hysteria amongst the people. And I think the point we can learn from the Alshich is like this. There will always be in life a nesina, a giving, a stimulus, you can call it, right? Which creates fear or a worry, panic about a particular situation that you feel like you can't deal with, whether that's real, sometimes it's real, sometimes it's imagined, but it can be either, right? And in this context, it's negative in the sense that it's those driving a negative agenda, those wanting to instill that mass hysteria, the meraglim. Why will you be fixed for, because they wept, they'll be weeping for generations? It's the idea, perhaps that is being expressed here is that inevitably they'll fall into the trap again. Hashem is saying, you have to learn the lesson, right? Not to weep a bechia shel chinam, not to fall into that trap of where, exactly, being swept up in it, and others also leading you astray in terms of this negative agenda. Let's focus on what you hear. There are lots of lessons and ways you can take this, but let's on a purely like a negative agenda, right? As in a negative agenda is like doing the wrong thing. And Hashem is saying you need to learn that lesson, that don't allow those people who are vayitnu es kolom, they're giving their voice to you and telling you you need to act in a certain way. You're finished, you're ruined. No, you can stop that cycle. If you don't stop the cycle, eventually it's going to happen again, because ultimately there's going to be and that's why there'll be a bechiyol adoros, weeping for generations. Influences. Yeah, exactly. Absolute influences. There's a line from Viktor Frankl in his Man's Search for Meaning, which I think expresses this so powerfully. He says, between stimulus and response lies our freedom to choose. Yeah, the stimulus will always be there. There'll always be a vayitnu es kolom, right? There'll always be someone who's people there who are making a loud noise and are giving us the voice. Yeah. The question is, where do we choose our response to that? And that's all we're free to do so. And there's one final point I just mentioned.
So what was the significance of the whole?
So the people is the general people, then, according to that, right? So the Vatisa Kol Ha'edah is the meraglim. They're the ones who are the influencers, as you say correctly. They provide the ground, there's like the fertile ground for this, hysteria. But the people need to learn that they don't have to, A does not equal B. Don't have to be this bechia l'doros as a result. You can stop the cycle if you want, right? Now, if you look at the Perek, very just briefly in the last couple of minutes we have, Perek Tesvov Posuk Base. So you have the introduction of, you have the several parshas which the Rishonim explain why these parshas are here. Specifically, there's this promise that they're going to enter Eretz Yisrael, and that's why there's the description now of the Nesachim, the libation offerings that are brought in the base that will be brought on the Mizbeach, because it's telling that it's a reassurance that children will come into Eretz Yisrael. But you also have the korbanos that are brought if a person is over the avodah zarah b'shogeg, right? Now, in that context, you have a situation. Perek Tesvov, Posuk Chov Dalet. And there's an Ibn Ezra. We won't have time for that. But there's the Ramban. The Ramban says that he describes what's going on here, and he says that the Posuk, which Posuk of Dalet says, there's something that's gone wrong. It's concealed from the most senior people in the Eidah, and they've done something terribly wrong. So he's actually going back on the previous. Yeah, he's actually going back on the previous posuk, 2 pasukim before. The chisishka v'lo is kol mitzvahs o'eda, right? But all the mitzvahs, the whole Torah, it's the worst possible scenario. Yeah, it's a korban. He calls it korban mumah l'chol Torah b'shogeg. Someone who's over the whole Torah, transgresses the whole Torah b'shogeg. Yeah, someone who attaches himself, for example, completely. There's a situation where the whole kahal. He gives, the Ramban explains it, that you can have a situation, an example when how extreme this could be is when there is some understanding that the whole Torah is ended, There's no need, doesn't apply anymore, a mistaken understanding, even the most senior, perhaps even the Sanhedrin, everything's gone completely wrong. They suddenly decide by mistake that it doesn't apply for the future. The extreme situations. He brings Psukim in Yechezkel that describes such events. Or, for example, they forget the entire Torah, and then the Torah provides the remedy for that. It was all b'shogeg, it was all a mistake. It wasn't intentional. It was a mistake. The Chiper HaKohen, Pasuk Chafei, Al Kol Hadas B'nei Yisrael V'Nislach Lohem Ki Shgogohi, because it was a shogeg, it was unwitting. And they have to bring Korban, and then we have the pasuk that we say on Yom Kippur night, Kol Nidrei V'Nislach L'Chol Hadas B'nei Yisrael V'Lager Agor B'Seichom Ki L'Chol Ha'am B'Shgogo, because the whole people acted unwittingly. What is the message here, and the link to the Meraglim? The V'Nislach is the key word here. The fact that it's always possible for recovery. There is always a way back. The Meraglim and the mistake of the Meraglim and the complete collapse in that sense of that moral panic, and the people completely collapsing and saying, "There's nothing we do. We're finished. It's over." Right? There is no way back from what's happened to us. We're never going to be able to recover. The message, the uplifting message, if you like, that is transmitted to them almost immediately after this parsha is that there is always a way back. It's always recoverable. If we take responsibility for our actions, if a person is able to get up and say, we did something wrong, but it was a mistake, it was an error, I realized what I've done wrong, then you can achieve, even in that extreme situation, you can achieve a v'nislach. And that is the connection, right? The connection between how to go from a moral panic to moral responsibility is that taking a responsibility. And then they can achieve that. Have a very good evening. Have a good Shabbos. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Okay.
Good night.
Have a good Shabbos.
Thank you.
Pleasure.